Hello, 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 and welcome to the shadow work class, which is all focused on helping you to process uncomfortable emotions. So, as I kind of mentioned in the welcome video, before we even dive into these things, I want to take a quick moment to walk you through a short breathwork exercise. Really just breathing to help relax the nervous system, to bring you into the space, to set the tone for the work that we're going to be doing together here. So, if you need to pause the video right now, go ahead and do that. If you need to jump into some comfy clothes or excuse yourself to a place where you have more privacy, pause the video, get settled, get comfortable in a seated position. And when you're ready, come back and we will begin this breathwork exercise. So hopefully you've had a chance to get cozy and comfy. I want you to, in a seated position, like I said, you can either have legs crossed or you can put them on the floor, rest the palms of your hands on your knees, and you can do either face down, kind of just resting them there, or you can rest them face up for receiving. Whatever you feel intuitively that feels good for you, do that. And I want you to let the eyes drift shut right now and just begin focusing on the breath. And I don't want you to focus right now on deepening the breath or lengthening the breath. I just want you to notice where you're at right now. So a lot of times we breathe really shallow, only in these upper lungs, and we don't even realize it. And breath is one of the most powerful tools we have, really to help regulate the nervous system, to bring us into our body, to bring us into center. And this is why I'm such a big believer in beginning all work with some type of relaxation having to do with our breath. So I want you just to notice, where is your breathing at right now? And if you notice it's shallow, that's fine. That's why we're doing this work and practice together. So I want you to now begin, as you're focusing on this breath, now begin to focus on lengthening the breath. So in through the nose, slow breath. And I want you to take one big cleansing breath out through the mouth. So in through the nose. Audible sigh through the mouth. So in through the nose. Releasing that breath through the mouth. Do a couple cycles of that. Maybe do 2 or 3 here, and I'll do them with you. One more time, wherever you're at. So sighing it out like that is really cleansing breath. Let your breath return to normal. And I just want you to begin focusing on bringing that breath down into the belly. And then exhaling slow and with control through the nose. And as you're doing this deeper breathing, I want you to set the intention that you have for taking this course, or even just bring your awareness to what your intention is, where you would like to see improvement, what cycles maybe you're working on breaking. And as you exhale, I want you to release any tension in the body. So you might actually take a moment while you're breathing to scan the body. Notice where you're holding. Is it in the shoulders, the jaw, the hands, the feet? That's a big one, believe it or not. The legs, the back, the abdomen. Just kind of scan the body here as you're breathing and notice where you're holding. And on those exhales, consciously release these muscles. I want you to allow any concerns or stress or obligations that you may have to be released right now with this out breath. You'll come back to these things later, they'll still be waiting for you, but I really want you to focus on creating space here for you, for your personal and spiritual development. And so I don't want you to be worried or focused on these other things. So I want you to create a little bubble here while you're in this class. Just allow all your titles, obligations, responsibilities to sit outside of that bubble for now. When you leave this space, like I said, they'll still be there waiting for you. So there's no need to stress about that. And I want you just to spend a couple minutes in this bubble, continuing to relax, not a couple minutes, just a couple moments. Continuing to relax the muscles, continuing to bring yourself into your body using breath. Setting your intentions. Opening up to allowance, releasing and softening. One more deep cleansing breath in. And then I'm going to invite you to let the eyes flutter open and return to me here in this video. Hopefully you're feeling the effects of exercises like that, and they don't take very long. So just know you always have your breath work, relaxation in your toolbox. So I want to first, once again, thank you for joining me. And I really want to just say that I congratulate you on beginning the shadow work journey, whether you have signed up for all 5 classes or just this one based on what your needs are. I just want to say how much I appreciate you for doing this work. I'm a firm believer that when we take the time to do our own inner work, to heal our wounds, to confront our emotions and toxic traits and cycles and all of these things, that we're doing such a great service for the collective. Every single time someone takes time and space to heal and care for themselves, you're contributing to the positivity in the collective, which we so desperately need right now, as you know. Depending on when you're watching this, we've had a rough few years here in the collective worldwide with this global pandemic, all the fear, the loss, the uncertainty, the division. These are all things that have taken a massive toll on the collective and thus rippling down to taking a huge toll on so many individually. I see people talking about depression and anxiety all the time. And I think we all have seen and noticed the anger that's been birthed from the divisiveness as well. These are all symptoms of the collective suffering right now, which is why this work that you're doing is so very important, because you're choosing in this moment with this actionable step to contribute something positive to the collective, to offset all of these heavier, more dense and uncomfortable emotions, I would say, but also just all of the energy that's been running through the collective pretty rampantly. So I want you to take a moment to acknowledge how powerful you are and how powerful it is when you decide to do this work. So the first thing I'm going to talk about in this video is the importance of contrast. And excuse me while I take a sip of my tea. I can't do these without my hot beverage. I want to talk about the importance of contrast and why we need contrast in this human experience. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because understanding the importance of contrast will also help you when you get to the part where you're working through the shadow work processes. It's going to help you reframe the way you feel about heavier emotions that do show up. And I call them heavy emotions because they are quite literally a more dense, lower vibrational frequency. Now, that doesn't make them bad, just like it doesn't make higher vibrational frequencies good. It just is. Everything in this universe is energy. So it's us as humans that always want to label and put things in a really nice box of good and bad, positive or negative. I will use those terms from time to time for lack of any better word. But for the most part, I really try to avoid slapping those labels on our emotions because our emotions really are just what they are. They all serve a purpose. And that's kind of what I want to talk about when we talk about the contrast. Um, how would we, well, first of all, starting at the beginning, what would be the point of this human experience if we had no contrast, if we never experienced struggle, challenge, suffering, grief, if we came here and we had no challenges, no concerns, no suffering, then what would be the point of us coming to have this human experience? We're here to grow, to evolve our soul along our soul journey, to help expand source energy through our own experience, because we all are truly source energy being expressed in some type of physical form. And that's everything we see in this 3D world. We have chosen to be expressed in this body with this personality. And in that choosing, we choose our struggles, our hardships, our challenges, and the painful and uncomfortable things that we may experience during this life, all serving the higher purpose of the evolution of your soul. So while these things may be so uncomfortable to deal with, so painful, there's a lot of painful things that so many of us have to deal with. It does serve a divine and sacred purpose for you and your lessons and for the collective in general. So what would be the point of having this experience? We would not be able to do that type of learning and expansion and evolution of our soul if we didn't experience and have the opportunity to experience contrast in our human journey. So the other part of that is, how would we know how good we can feel if we haven't experienced how bad we can feel? We have to have these emotions of heavy and light to work and play off of each other, much like we see in that symbolism in the yin and the yang that is so widely popular. Both elements and aspects of heavy and light are really needed to be able to recognize and understand them from each other. It gives us that comparison. It gives us that point of reference that we need, so that when we are in our light, when we are vibrating at a higher vibration, we're able to easily recognize it and we can say, yes, more of this, right? So contrast is really, really important. And, our emotions really are our greatest teachers. So they lead us to so much within ourselves. They alert us to pain, much like, a physical wound does, right? It lets us know, hey, something's wrong. Let me stop and evaluate this. I need to treat myself. I always say that we need to really get to a point where we are treating emotional wounding the same way we do physical wounding. If you cut your finger off next week, nobody in your life is going to say, just get over it. And you're not going to be expected to jump back to work or jump back into your life. You're going to be given this grace period of healing, nurturing yourself, and caring for your wound, right? And everyone around you will understand that. But I find when we're talking about emotional stuff that shows up for us and emotional wounding, there's an attitude of like, just get over it, or don't let this affect your work or your personal life. And all of these things are interwoven within our experience. So it's the same concept of going back to that finger example. While it might just be your finger that's cut off and injured, using that example, as morbid as it is, the pain that you experience is going to affect your entire body and how you feel. You're going to require more rest for healing. You're not going to feel like probably being social with people. You're going to want to go inward. And the same thing is true when we're having these issues show up with our emotions. We have to create that space to nurture our wounds, to explore what's showing up for us. And so a lot of times we need to create boundaries in our life around these things so that we're able to do that. And so that other people respect our need for this time for healing. But in that space that I'm talking about, we are able to observe these things with curiosity through a non-judgmental lens and see what are the lessons being taught. So I'll use a really personal example from my own life. It's been about a year almost, in February next month, that my fiance left with no warning. I did not expect it. It blindsided me. And when I say with no warning, I mean, I was at work and he was packing up his stuff. I think I saw him for 5 minutes before I knew he was leaving, and he had packed up and left the state to really hardly speak to me at all since then. And just a few months before we were supposed to be married too, it was a lot. It was really unexpected, super painful. And in that moment, I had a choice to make. I could have definitely wallowed in it and felt sorry for myself and wondered, why me? Why do all my relationships fail? I could have let that train of thought take me to many different places, maybe some of self-doubt, who knows? I didn't choose that option. Instead, I chose to honor those feelings, and trust me when I say that I definitely took time. I took almost, 8 months off of work from this job to just be with myself and heal what was showing up to be healed. But there were so many lessons that were held in that for me, which I'm not necessarily going to share because they are quite personal. But I allowed that experience and the grief that I was feeling to lead me to a deeper understanding of myself and my lessons. So when these uncomfortable or painful experiences show up that lead us to feeling these uncomfortable and painful emotions, shifting your perception to that curiosity and understanding that our emotions are our greatest teachers will help you move through them more quickly. So there's different ways that we will naturally try to avoid feeling our feelings. First of all, when there's been any situation that invokes these heavier emotions, the ego is the first one to be alerted, and the ego always responds from a place of fear. Now, if you want to learn more about the ego and building a relationship and understanding the ego, which is actually a really great and valuable tool for our journey, make sure you check out Getting Acquainted with Your Ego and Subconscious Mind shadow work class, where I go into a lot more depth about the purpose of the ego and how we can love and accept our ego and use our ego and the voice of our ego to actually help us grow and learn. So I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video outside of the fact that the ego is always speaking to us from a place of fear. Whether we recognize it or not, when we start to ask the ego questions, when we start to build this relationship, it will always come back to, what are you afraid of? And there is always a core fear there. So when we have these painful or uncomfortable experiences, it's the ego that's first alerted. And the ego would love to have us convinced that it's too painful for us to truly confront and acknowledge our emotions. And so if we're super identified with the voice of our ego, or we don't even recognize that that is who's speaking up within us, naturally we're going to try to avoid feeling the things that we don't want to feel, the things that the ego says are too heavy and too hard and too uncomfortable and too painful. It's too afraid to feel. So another part of this mindset work is really getting rid of this idea that it's a fearful thing to feel our emotions. Again, it just is, and it is so uncomfortable. But as you drop your resistance and surrender and accept your emotions as they are, it actually gets a lot easier. And that doesn't mean that we don't have to feel the discomfort of what's showing up or go through the pain of what's showing up, but anything is going to be far less painful in the absence of resistance. It's going to be a lot more smooth if we're surrendering to the flow of our experience. So there's a lot of different ways that people choose to avoid their feelings. I think we've heard people talk about many times, like pushing things down. We just push it down, we keep on going, distract ourselves, maybe with work, maybe with TV, maybe with food, maybe with self-sabotaging behavior like drinking or drugs or substance abuse to help numb them out so that we don't feel them anymore. But avoidance and escapism is a big problem when it comes to dealing with our emotions, because we can never truly escape what's already been activated within us. It's been activated for a reason, and it's been put in our experience for a reason. And the universe has a funny way of making us repeat lessons over and over if we're not catching on the first, second, third, fourth time. And each time this lesson's presented to us, it will come in more clear, more severely, you could say. So there's really no such thing as being able to completely avoid. You can run for a while, but what we see when we run and avoid and use self-sabotage and escapism to prevent ourselves from truly experiencing our feelings is we begin in time to see these things manifested in a very physical way. That's why stress is the leading cause of heart disease and heart attacks. These things do take root in the body, these emotions unprocessed in the body. They cause all types of disease. One thing I see a lot in my work with trauma recovery and trauma survivors who haven't really processed their wounding is a lot of autoimmune disorders, a lot of unexplained pain in the body, with doctors almost kind of saying, there's nothing wrong with you, this is a mental thing. And I can assure you it's not a mental thing, it's an energetic thing. And that's the difference. But unfortunately, our Western medicine hasn't caught up quite to the wisdom of understanding things like energetics when it comes to treating the body. We don't have a very holistic view of treating the body when it comes to Western medicine. So that's why so many people that come to me for trauma recovery have been going through it as well, trying to figure out what's going on with their body and being told by doctors that it's all in their head, which is really devalidating in itself. So if this resonates with you, I want you to take comfort in knowing it's not mental, it's not in your head, but it is energetic. And you can shift it and heal the body through healing these energetic aspects, which you'll learn how to do in this class. So you're already off to a great start on that. So congratulations. So the key is, instead of trying to avoid our emotions, which will always show up in some way, it's like the person who avoids their anger. Let's use this as an example. And things happen that they should naturally feel anger about, because anger is a natural emotion. But they're afraid to express, and they don't know how to express their anger in a healthy way, possibly, or they're fearful of feeling angry, or they don't want to be perceived in a certain way. So they put that emotion down and they refuse to express it or process it. Well, what we see happen a lot of times is eventually one tiny thing happens that is like the straw that broke the camel's back. And this person like loses their stuff completely. And people are shocked and like, oh, I never saw it coming. But it's all of that pent up anger that wasn't expressed at the moment. It can't forever be held in. And so it comes out in these really destructive and toxic ways that's not serving to the person or to anyone else around them. So that's why it's so important that we deal with these things, so we don't bleed and project dark stuff all over everyone else. And that's coming back to that original statement I made about why this work is so beneficial to the collective in general. When you show up more healed, more aware, more in tune, you're setting an example for other people. You're sending off this positive energy. You're showing people that it's okay and safe to experience these things in a healthy way. So it makes a huge difference, as opposed to losing it or taking things out on people, etc. So it takes a lot of resistance and creates a lot of resistance for us to continuously deny our emotions, which is what I was kind of talking about earlier. Anytime we begin to create that resistance, we'll see chaos show up in different ways. So I've already kind of talked about how that can happen on a physical level, but it can also happen on a personal level in our lives. We may see ourselves repeating the same cycles over and over and over, and we can't figure out why. We may choose the same type of emotionally unavailable partners, and yet we can't figure out why we keep kind of falling into that same trap with people. If you're self-sabotaging, that obviously can show up in a lot of chaotic ways, affecting your job, your livelihood, those who love you, and all kinds of things. So not only does it affect the body when we're allowing that resistance, it can affect your whole entire life and your experiences, kind of making a snowball of worse and worse and worse and worse, and never really being able to shift into that better place. So that's why it's so important that we learn how to surrender and accept. And one thing that makes this a lot easier is to remind yourself that whatever you're experiencing, even the most painful of grief, say experiencing the loss of a loved one, it is temporary. That doesn't mean we won't always have that space in our heart for that person. That doesn't mean we won't, you know, think back of them with sadness of their missingness from our lives. But the bone deep, I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't even focus type of grieving that we initially go through, even that most intense emotion, it's all temporary. Everything is movement, 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 movement. Everything is changing all the time. And so this includes our emotions. So reminding yourself when you're in that pain that, okay, I can do this. This is only going to be temporary. Let me feel this to the depths of my feeling. Let me cry until I have no more tears left to cry. Let me care for myself, however that looks, and just acceptance of where we're at without longing to be somewhere else, without rejecting or resisting where we are at. Oh, I wish I wasn't going through this. Why is this happening to me? I don't want to feel this. Those are the ways that our internal narrative creates that resistance. So we want to surrender. And here's a big law of attraction tip in general, but I want you to, going forward, be mindful of how you express your emotions, and not how you express them, like actually express them. How you express what's showing up for you is more the way I want to say. There's a big energetic difference in saying, I am so angry, I am so sad, I am so resentful, jealous. When you're saying I am and putting anything after that, you're making a powerful declaration. You are not your emotions. But when you make the declaration, I am angry, you're identifying with your emotions. You're saying, I am my emotion. And we aren't our emotions. We experience our emotions. They come and they go and they flow and they shift and they change and they process. And that's what happens when we're in a healthy state of surrender. These emotions are able to move through us more quickly. When we resist them, they linger. That popular saying, you have to feel it to heal it. There's a lot to that, as cliche as it is. Refusing to feel it holds it. Feeling it allows it. It allows it to do what it does, to move, to flow through you. So a better way to express those things are, I am feeling very angry. I am feeling really sad. Just adding that I am feeling as opposed to I am is a huge shift in energetics, because our words do hold so much energy. Like I said, every single thing is energy. That includes the words and the vibrational frequency of the words you use. So just shifting your mindset around how you are identified with your emotions is a really big step in processing and moving through them. And you'll hear me say moving through, because we will never get over something. Have you ever heard someone just say, just get over it already? I have heard myself say that to myself sometimes. I think sometimes we're the ones telling ourselves, not allowing ourselves to feel what we feel, not giving ourselves the space, feeling guilty. Well, it's been over a year. since my partner left. I should be over it. But guess what? It's been almost a year for me, and it's still something I struggle with, and that's okay. When those feelings show up, which they show up a lot less now after having so much time and healing and space, I honor those. I don't tell myself, get over it already. You shouldn't be feeling this. It's already been so long. I might tell myself that for a moment, but I recognize that internal dialogue and I say, no, I'm going to feel this because it's showing up still for a reason. So if it's there, it's there. So I'm going to honor it. I'm going to ask questions of it. I'm going to observe it. I'm going to learn from it. So surrender and acceptance are one of the first things in learning how to not identify with our emotions. It helps us in the processes, which I will talk about. I am going to go over these step by step with you here in this video as well. So the key is to simply ride the waves of your emotion. Ride them, observe them, allow them to carry you, allow them to be what they are, and allow them to shift when they shift. I remember when I first laughed after my partner left, I was with my sister. We tend to laugh a lot when we're together. She was a godsend. She was over here packing up his stuff and doing all these things for me. And I was just so thankful. But I caught myself laughing, and for a split second, I thought, how dare you laugh? How dare you laugh when your whole world's been turned upside down? How dare you laugh when one of the people that you trusted and loved the most walked out of your life with no warning? And then I had to think about that and say, no, it's okay for me to still experience joy, even in these really intense times. So allow yourself to feel whatever shows up. I know this is really common with people who have lost loved ones. They'll feel guilt and shame if they catch themselves laughing or enjoying something, and they'll immediately bring themselves back to that heavier emotion. So when we talk about surrender and acceptance, it's not just about surrendering and accepting the heavy stuff that's important, but it's also when we're going through these really intense and heavy emotions to also allow the lighter energies to have their space too when they show up. Just be with what's there. Just allow for what's there. Really simple. But it does require reprogramming, and it does require consistency. So it's simple, but it's not easy, I would say. So during all this, when we're experiencing these heavy emotions, another really important key aspect is self-care. Now, I kind of talked about that when I used the analogy of the missing finger. We would take that time, right, to rest, to heal. We'd get medical help. We would seek support. We would ask people, maybe in our communities, to help us in some way. We would lean on others. We would take that time. But again, when it comes to experiencing these really heavy emotions, because it's not so widely accepted by the collective, I think oftentimes we have that message coming in from external sources, just get over it and move on. Don't bring your personal things, stuff into work. Don't let your personal issues affect you out in the real world. You have to put that brave face on, show up, do your job, be strong. And I want to tell you that strength does not lie in hiding your emotions. Strength lies in embracing your emotions. Strength lies in your bravery to express your emotions, even when some people may not understand or label you as being some kind of way. So the importance of self-care ties into this, and self-care can look different for everyone, right? There's no one way to experience self-care. I think often we think about it as long spa days, getting our hair done, getting our nails done, taking a long nap, taking a long bath. These are all forms of self-care, but they're not the only one. I heard a saying one time that said, self-care is eating healthy, and self-care is also eating chocolate cake. And that really resonated with me for what that means on a bigger level. Self-care isn't always these extravagant ways of pampering ourselves. Sometimes self-care is putting on a funny movie and giving yourself a 90-minute break to just laugh and think about something else. Now, we don't want to fall into escapism, but we can give ourselves these breaks. We can distract ourselves with higher vibrational things. It's not bypassing, despite what the world would have you believe right now. bypassing really isn't possible. I've used this word in my work some, but as I've learned more and more about trauma recovery, I really realize that bypassing it isn't even possible. Because like I said, we can try to move on to love and light. We can try to move on to positivity only. But if we haven't truly addressed and sat with these feelings, those emotions are stored anyways. So you might attempt bypassing, but it's not really something that we can actually do. Eventually, those things are going to catch up with us, and we'll be forced to confront them whether we want to or not in some capacity. So I'm starting to really move away from that term in general because I feel like it's so misleading, like so many other popular buzzwords out there right now. But taking time out here and there to create space to relieve yourself. And it doesn't have to be with a funny movie. That could look like meditation. That could look like breath work. That could look like a bunch of different things, going for a walk, exercise, anything that brings your focus onto something else besides your suffering. So it's kind of about creating that balance. We want to have the space and the time to acknowledge our feelings and to work through them and to look for the lessons and to process them and to do the shadow work. But we don't want to be living in that space all the time. So we do want to be doing things that also nourish ourselves. And self-care is super important through this process. So if you're experiencing heavy emotions, I really want you to pop out that journal or notebook that I told you that you would need. I want you to pause this video for a moment, and I want you to think about and write down the ways that you most enjoy experiencing self-care. I want you to think about the things that soothe you, the things that bring you comfort, the things that bring you relief, and even some of the things that may bring you temporary distraction and bring you to a lighter energetic space, even if it's for a short period of time. So go ahead and pause this video, take some time and think about this, make a short list. And when you're finished with that list, I then want you to make a commitment to incorporating a self-care consistently, a self-care practice into your routine if you don't already. So go ahead and do that now. And when you're ready, hit play and we'll continue on. So before I end this video with the 6 steps of processing, which you'll also find in the PDF principle workbook that you were sent, I do want to address wallowing versus processing, because these are two very different energetic frequencies. Wallowing is extremely disempowering. It leads us to believe that we have no escape, that we have no way, that we are stuck. It's usually a victim mentality. So going back to that example I used of myself in my breakup, I could have wallowed and that would have looked like I said, poor me, woe is me. Why does this always happen? Why do I always choose these horrible people? I'm never going to have a healthy relationship, et cetera, et cetera. Wallowing is complaining with no intent on finding resolution or creative solutions to what's showing up. It is attention seeking and it is validation seeking. So you'll see a lot of people, I kind of had this experience online with a woman who follows my work. I think she really just followed it because she was hoping to sign me up for her multi-level marketing stuff, but that's neither here nor there. However people find me, I'm thankful when they do. But she had posted several times publicly about how sad she was, will the cycle ever end? And I nudgingly, or not nudgingly, I guess maybe nudgingly, because I am a super action-oriented person. I'm not one for holding space, you could say. And I'm not a big believer in holding space, believe it or not. I know, collective gas. But I feel like holding space is good in like tiny doses. Sometimes we do need that verbal processing. But for the most part, I think when we hold space for others, we kind of create the space for them to wallow. And if you don't know what holding space means literally holding and creating space for someone to express themselves without judgment or offering advice, just for the sake of them having the opportunity to verbally process. So I do think it has some place but I think we use it far too often. And I think if it's given too much room and we don't move from that holding space to, okay, what are my options? How can I process this? What tools do I need? What steps should I take? Then it easily snowballs into the habit of wallowing. So she had posted, like I was saying, several times on her Facebook about how terrible she feels. Her life was horrible. When will the cycle end? And I offered her many free resources. But the truth was, it was all met with resistance because she really wasn't in a space where she was wanting to move through it. What she wanted to do is she wanted to go on the internet and talk about how horrible her life was so she could get that high of having hundreds of strangers say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm here for you if you need to talk. Keep your head up. You're beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I say wallowing needs validation. Wallowing will demand that we be given the space to feel sorry for ourselves. So it's very disempowering. It doesn't empower anyone by saying, okay, like, here's what I'm experiencing. Here's what it's teaching me. Here's the lessons I can learn from it. And here's the steps I'm going to take to move out of this space to a much better space than I started out before I even got to this space. Processing is looking at these things with non-judgmental observation, looking for the lessons, not denying that we're feeling them, not pushing ourselves to feeling better sooner. No, not that at all. So you're still giving yourself the space, but you're doing it in a healthier way that will actually help you to move through what you're experiencing rather than forever stay stuck in your wounding, rather than staying stuck in that victim archetype of feeling like you're always the victim. Life isn't fair. Life deals me unhealthy hands. That's one thing she told me. And she obviously didn't follow my work too closely, because when I offered her some resources and said I basically said things will change when you decide to change them. If you change nothing, nothing changes, right? Her response to me was, well, that's easy for you to say, hun. And she used the word hun. Until you've been through everything I've been through, it's easier said than done. And so anyone who follows my work knows that I have a history of trauma, pretty severe trauma in my past, starting from when I was really young. So my thing about this is, guys, none of us are getting out unscathed. So any narrative that tells you that because you suffered, that you can't be free or that you're justified in wallowing, that's the ego showing up, because none of us get out of this unscathed. Here's a newsflash. Everyone's been through a lot. We all have our lessons. It doesn't matter what it may look like on the outside. It may appear that someone hasn't been through, or that they have everything, or everything's handed to them. But appearances are deceiving, which is why we shouldn't even be comparing or judging other people's experience, because we have no idea. But the truth of the matter is that none of us get out of this unscathed. We all experience trauma and heavy emotions. So your wounding, what happened to you, it doesn't make it more than what other people have experienced. It doesn't give you the right to wallow over other people. We all have the opportunity to move through whatever, no matter how severe it was, to a better place. That's our God-given birthright. That's what spirit wants from us. We are not meant to eternally suffer through this human experience. We've been given tools to work through these things so we can always return to a place of joy. Now, we can't stay there forever because, like I said, we need the contrast, but the wallowing's not serving. I did include a little check sheet, wallowing versus processing, that you can kind of look at. And I want you to say, if you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, I've been a wallower, I don't want you to judge yourself. I wallowed for 20 something years. I'm not judging. I know sometimes when I talk about these things, I notice people get triggered because the ego is saying that, oh, she's judging us, she's making me feel bad, blah, blah, blah. It's not judgment, but that comes to the awareness that we need to have. The entire point of shadow work is to bring what's hidden into the light. So in other words, bring what's in the subconscious into our awareness. So there's no judgment in that awareness. It just is what it is. None of us are perfect. We all have things we have to work on. There's no shame. If you're listening to this and you say, oh yeah, I'm a wallower, that gives you actually the opportunity in that moment to change that energy and move into a space of processing, which will shift you to a much more supportive space within. So no judgment. So the last thing I'm going to cover is the steps that you can take to process heavy emotions. So the first step is to reframe what's showing up. So I already talked a lot about this when I talked about viewing our emotions as our teachers, viewing our uncomfortable experiences as our lessons, and the importance of contrast. So sit with those ideas and allow yourself and your brain to retrain. Now, it takes a while if this isn't something you're already in the habit of doing. So don't get discouraged. The key is to bring yourself back to a reframing thought that serves you. You'll keep bringing yourself back, bringing yourself back. And if you consistently stick with this reframing in just 3 short weeks, your thoughts are going to begin to naturally move towards the reframing thoughts as opposed to what you've previously maybe been allowing that narrative to be. So the first thing is to reframe, see these things showing up as our teachers, as our blessings, look for the lessons. Or no, not so much look for the lessons in this step, but know that there are lessons being offered and understand that every single thing that happens is on some level serving your highest and greatest good. And more importantly, is serving the highest and greatest good of all, whether we can understand it or not. We don't have all of the pieces of this puzzle. So sometimes that's where our faith and trust in a plan greater than our own understanding especially comes in. That's why faith is so important. Trusting in a plan that's greater than our own is key in this reframing process, and understanding that you may never get to a point in this lifetime where you understand the whys to why certain things had to happen the way they did, but having the faith that they did for some reason that maybe is out of your awareness because we don't have all the pieces. So first step is reframing. Step 2, and this one's really important, is you're going to observe without judgment. So this takes us away from over-identification with our emotions. It brings us to a space of curiosity where we can look at these emotions and say, what is this emotion teaching me? Why is this emotion showing up? Curiosity is key here, but judgment will keep you from being in that curious space. And like I said, the ego is often triggered when we experience uncomfortable things, and we'll fight this non-judgmental observation, and which will try to hold you in a space of identification with your emotions. So looking at everything from curiosity, you might ask yourself, what lesson is this showing me? What can I learn from this? How can I learn to more healthily process this even? That could be the lesson in itself. So just getting really curious and being that non-judgmental observer of what's showing up for you without attaching any expectations, without attaching anything else to it at all. Step 3 is to use tools to identify the lessons and the source of what I was speaking about earlier. And those tools are going to look differently for everyone. You will want to look at what resonates with you, whether that's journaling. You're already in the process of shadow work, which is a really valuable tool in any personal and spiritual development sphere. Anyone who's on that path, shadow work is a must. It could be meditation. It could be getting support and help from someone like myself, who is trained in helping to walk people through these processes. And I do want to say at this point, if there's ever a time during the shadow work where you do feel overwhelmed, where you do feel as if it's too much, you're having thoughts that intrusive thoughts you can't control, then it's time to get help. It's time to reach out. It's time to get support. There's no shame in that. So sometimes that tool is actually just getting some help and some guidance and some support from someone. But this is a chance for you to also explore different tools, different things that help you through the identification. Automatic writing for me, I'm a writer, so I go to the writing stuff, usually first. But automatic writing is a really great tool that I have found to work for myself and for my clients. So I've included that in your workbook, an opportunity for you to practice and work with that tool if you haven't already, to kind of help get to the root cause of what's showing up, the root cause of some of these limiting beliefs or cycles, or you can use it for so many ways, not just processing emotions. So that's just something you can kind of go into your toolbox if it resonates with you, but do some exploring around this, like what tools work best for you. And then the fourth step is to do the healing work around what you discover. So that's a lot of times reprogramming the mind, shifting our mindset. Sometimes it's just experiencing our grief. Sometimes it is crying. It's sometimes going to a rage room and smashing a bunch of stuff. This will look different for everyone, but it's doing that healing work. It's committing to, okay, this is the space where you move from wallowing. It's saying, okay, this is giving me the opportunity to heal some stuff. It's giving me the opportunity to observe some stuff. Now I kind of want to do some work around this. And that will take you to taking those actionable steps when the time is right. So here is the thing about this. If you take actionable step before you move through all these other steps, then you run the risk of that attempted bypassing. So when you get to the point of taking actionable steps, it's when you're ready. It's when you feel like you have a good understanding of what those steps need to be, when you can make a good plan, and then you can start taking those actionable steps. But you need to really make sure that you work through the other steps of processing first, so that you're not storing unhealthy emotion in the body, which, as we've already talked about, creates a lot of issues. And the sixth step is to simply enjoy the work that you've done. Like I said, this is hard work, sitting with your emotions, digging down deep, looking at the root cause of why these things are showing up. It's hard work. So we always have to take an integration period where we simply bask in the work that we've done. We enjoy the progress we make. We allow ourselves to feel proud and happy and commend ourselves for the work we've done, and just enjoy the benefits that comes forth from doing this work. So there you have it. Those are the steps. So I have changed from doing these classes, from doing live to this recorded. This is new for me. I hope that this helps serve and support you. Usually what I do when I do these lives is I'll walk people through each of the journaling prompts and all of the exercises, but I'm kind of changing this format to fit more of the structure of doing a recorded digital class. So you'll find additional exercises and content in the workbook that was sent over to you, and that is going to be what your homework is. I want you to work through that workbook. I want you to sit with the material, and I want you to practice reframing and these other steps that I laid out for you. So I, once again, and I know I've said this a million times, but my gratitude is limitless. I'm so thankful that you have allowed me to walk you through this, to share some insight with you, to facilitate this class. It is my deepest honor and privilege to do this work. So thank you, thank you, thank you.